Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Senate Judiciary hearings dated January 24th, 2024. We're going to open the hearings this afternoon with a public hearing on Senate Bill 503. Senator Waters is not able to be here today. He is the prime sponsor, but his aide, Cameron Lapine, is here, who's going to introduce the bill. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Senator Carson and members of the Judiciary Committee. For the record, I am Cameron Lapine, the legislative aide assigned to Senator David Waters. I am introducing Senate Bill 503 on Senator Waters' behalf, which he filed at the request of the Fish and Game Commission to allow the Fish and Game Department to collect fingerprints from guide applicants. The department regulates the licensing of hunting and fishing guides and currently has rules in place to obtain a criminal history records release from the Department of Safety. However, a Department of Safety criminal history would only include any activity that occurred in the state of New Hampshire. In order to obtain criminal history records from other jurisdictions, the department needs to involve the FBI, and the FBI requires an applicant's fingerprints in order to conduct a national criminal history search. It is critically important that the department be able to screen applicants for criminal behavior before allowing them to be certified as guides. Guides may take small groups or even individuals of any age into remote areas to find ideal hunting and fishing opportunities. The safety of our citizens who partake in these sports depends on a thorough background check of the guide before the guide is allowed to take people into the wilderness. There is also an Amendment 0230S that Senator Waters filed at the request of the department to address concerns around the additional costs of a national criminal history search. The amendment adds language to clarify that the National Criminal History Search would only be performed for first-time applicants. Colonel Jordan and Fish and Game are here to answer any questions. I can't answer them, but could ask Senator Waters if you want me to. Thank you, Senator Carson.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Lapine. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, the chair will call Colonel Jordan. Good afternoon, Colonel. It's good to see you again. Uh-oh. Oh. It's been a while.
So now we'll turn the mic on. I'll say all of that again. So for the record, my name is Kevin Jordan. I'm the Chief of Law Enforcement at New Hampshire Fish and Game. Senator Waters brought this bill at our request, and I have, before I leave, I have some written testimony from the Guides Association who I've worked with on this, and they asked me to submit this. They are in support, as we are, of the amended bill that's before you in SB 503. So just a little background, Cam did a real good job kind of telling you the history of it. So currently we can check New Hampshire residents. I can run their criminal backgrounds when they apply for a guide's license, which is required by rule. But I cannot check people out of state to see if they have had criminal. All I can do is ask them that and hope that they tell me the truth. So we've had one awful story where we had a registered sex offender from another state who became a guide a number of years ago, and he took small children to bob houses on the lake, and he was offending them. I don't know if you remember that. We had legislation that came over as a result of that, and we tightened up, as a result of that incident, we tightened up a lot of the ways of allowing the applications to apply. I recently had another scare where I had an individual call me from New York State. He freely admitted that he had committed a homicide in the early 90s, and he had done state prison time, and he wanted to become a New Hampshire guide. I told him that under current law, we could not allow that. He's suing me, both personally and through the agency, because we violated his rights. I'm fairly confident we're going to win that suit, according to our Attorney General's office. But again, had he not told me that, we would have allowed him to become a guide. And I'm terrified that we would put someone in the field taking people into the woods when they've been convicted of a violent crime. So I went to the Guides Association, who has been very good in recent years to set the standard or the bar, if you will, higher for their field. I told them my concerns with this, they shared those concerns, and so I said a simple fix to this would be a change in the law to allow us to require applicants to get fingerprinted. And then I can go to Triple I through the FBI and run their backgrounds to find out if they've in fact been convicted. The problem with this is there's a $48 charge for that, which amounts to a 50% increase on the guide's license. So they kind of push back on that. I understood that. That's a big increase for them. And so we discussed a number of different ways to try and compromise on this. And the one compromise we arrived on, which seemed somewhat reasonable, was to at least do every guide applicant once. I don't think this happens a lot. I can only remember 2 times in my 3-decade career. So I don't think it happens a lot, and right now, we're not checking anyone. So anything would be an improvement. So I would ask you to consider this for one time. The guides were supportive of this. And then we may, if that doesn't work, I would come back to the legislature later and ask for a change. But right now, I think that would work for us. So I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony this afternoon, Colonel Jordan. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none,
Thank you very much.
the chair will call Marty Mobley. You're not speaking, okay. Are there any other members of the? Yeah. What he said. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 503? Okay, seeing one. We close the public hearing and the committee will be in recess for 5 minutes. The committee will come out of recess, and we are going to open the public hearing on Senate Bill 501 and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Fenton. Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's always good to be back in Judiciary. For the record, I am Senator Donovan Fenton. I represent District 10, and I am here to introduce Senate Bill 501 relative to driver's licenses for non-citizens residing in New Hampshire. The proposed bill amends RSA 263-39A and will provide further clarity to the issue of driver's license eligibility for non-citizen residents of New Hampshire. It does not add to or expand classes of immigrants eligible for a New Hampshire driver's license. This bill is simply clarifying language that the DMV already does. This bill doesn't add any new categories of immigrants eligible for a New Hampshire driver's license. It is consistent with the New Hampshire DMV's historic and current interpretation and administration of driver's licensing statutes and administrative rules. It states with clarity the classes of non-citizens who are currently applying for a New Hampshire driver's license. In most cases, the New Hampshire DMV conditions the issuance of a New Hampshire driver's license on a non-citizen's authorization to work in the U.S. And a big reason for this bill is that I had a constituent who was an overnight janitor at our hospital in District 10. And he is a non-citizen with a work permit to be here. But because the laws weren't clear, he had some trouble getting his driver's license and had to bike through snowstorms in order to get to his job. In April of this year, New Hampshire had 47,000 job openings. It would be great to fill those jobs and help people get to work, especially when it's building our economy. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Senator, for your testimony this afternoon. Are there any questions? Senator Gannon.
Just a few questions. We'll start first with you talked about a constituent in your district. So he would have been able to, if I understand right, if he had a work permit, he would be able to, with the law as presently is, he should, there might have been a few problems, but he should be able to get a license under existing law.
Correct. So the issue is it's almost a housekeeping bill. It clarifies the language that DMV is already doing, and this is for, the DMV personnel and those applying for the driver's license. And I believe someone from DMV is here, but don't hold me to that.
Oh, different question.
Follow
Follow-up. Just in line 9 and 10 of your bill, can you help me understand what a temporary basis is? You have a non-citizen who is living in the U.S. or New Hampshire on a temporary basis. Is that?
I would say temporary basis is someone holding a work permit, visa, things like that nature.
So if you had a work permit or a visa, as I understand current law, you already could get a license.
So if I understand what you're saying, I'm not sure about that, but under this bill, the purpose of this bill is to clarify the language that DMV is already doing. So DMV is issuing these driver's licenses to these non-residents, but the problem is some employees in DMV are confused about the language, DMV itself is confused about the language, and the resident applying is sometimes confused. This clarifies it, so there's no more confusion.
Follow-up?
Follow-up.
So before I go to my real line of questioning, my question would be, again, temporary basis to me makes, you've muddied the whole waters totally. I'm thinking of every single undocumented alien who's here, who may be recently over the border, who hasn't been verified or checked. And you're talking about everyone you've mentioned so far would already be entitled to a driver's license under our current law. I haven't seen any need, based on your examples, for a new law.
So this isn't necessarily new law, it's cleaning up the language that we have
Okay.
already.
I will stop there on that. If I can follow up, ma'am?
Yes, follow
Just a
up.
couple other questions. So I think if I understand it, the purpose is to make the daily life, I was thinking it was of undocumented, but so far you've been explaining people who are already rightfully here. Your bill, I think, is expanding for all undocumented persons, right?
No,
No, okay.
this bill is to help those who are residing in New Hampshire legally to obtain their driver's license in order to get to their jobs or the doctor's appointments, things of that nature.
Okay, so I think it's just final follow-up. You answered my question. You just said this is only for people who are legally here.
Correct.
They have a work visa, they're studying here, only people who meet the current requirements.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions? Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Is there a, I guess, a legal implication of changing non-resident alien to non-citizen?
I would assume so. DMV understands the language a little better, and so there's clarity amongst the laws that DMV has. You know, I am not a lawyer by any means. I think most of you are.
Yes, follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is in respect to these conditions where they're allowed to actually issue the driver's license, if the person became, if they lost their employment authorization document and whatnot, what would happen to the driver's license?
Clarify the question. If they lost what? Sorry.
So I'll give you an example. It says on line 7 and 8, it says an example of when a person's been, who has been granted an employment authorization document by the United States government. My understanding is that provision would say when a person's eligible for a driver's license. But I'm asking if they lost their employment authorization document, what would happen to the driver's license?
Do you mean if they lost it in terms of weren't eligible for the document or misplaced it?
If, I'll clarify, if it was revoked or they lost their eligibility, the government took it away.
I don't know how it gets revoked, so I would I'd ask that you ask that question of some of the individuals behind me.
Follow up?
I'm not clear how it gets revoked either. What I'm asking though is in the circumstance where it is revoked, what would happen to the state driver's license? Because my understanding is that employment authorization form is provided by the federal government. But the federal government revoking that form, what impact would that have on the state driver's license?
No, I appreciate the question, and I would ask that you ask the individuals behind me that question because I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, hold on. Senator Whitley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question. Just going back to that issue of the term alien versus non-citizen, are you aware that there's a national effort in updating federal law to have a more updated term, that we don't use the term alien anymore, that non-citizen is a more appropriate and inclusive term?
I thank you for the question, and yeah, I would agree. It's you know, I think this changing that word, especially for a lot of the DMV works with, is that, you know, we're going to start referring to these individuals as non-citizens instead of aliens.
Thank you.
Senator Cannon, did you have another question?
Yeah, so I'm still, to me, it's muddier than it was before, because you're saying non-citizen, that's going to be a dog whistle, you know, word Senator Willie uses sometimes, a dog whistle to people that you're talking about illegal or non-resident, people who came over the border without permission. So you're non-citizen when it's not to include anyone who's not legally here, correct?
Correct. This bill is to help, you know, individuals with
Okay.
their work permit get their driver's license so they can
Okay.
start contributing to New Hampshire's economy.
Okay, and again, that temporary basis sort of was just a bell to me.
And, you know, I would ask some of the individuals behind us, how many individuals we have here on a temporary basis that are
That was a
working and
question I
living
had
here.
for you. Yeah, how many, I've heard different numbers and I really, 10, 15,000, I have no idea what the real number is. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Senator Whitley and then Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to clarify what I was saying before, the use of non-citizen as a replacement for alien is actually used by the federal government, who regulates and manages immigration. So it is not, are you aware that it's not a dog whistle? It's actually a legal term that's used in the federal government.
Yes, and I think, you know, using the word non-citizen and clarifying the language helps go a long way, especially when DMV is looking at it and issuing these licenses.
Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a non-resident alien, I understand that's the term that's currently being used by the federal government under federal law. A non-resident alien, is that individual someone that's considered here to be here legally?
So the question was non-resident, what is the definition of a non-resident alien?
Is a non-resident alien someone that's here in the country legally?
You know, I think you're combining a couple different words, so I don't know if I can give you an answer to that.
Can I try to clarify? And that'll be my last thing.
Okay.
Sure. So non-citizen for you is not inclusive of non-resident aliens. So there's a whole class of people who are non-citizens. We're here totally legally, students, people working here, totally fine with that. You're not including in that group non-resident aliens who came here without, who shouldn't be here, who did technically cross the border.
Correct. The intent of this bill is not to give driver's licenses to those who are illegal here by certain
Okay.
means. The whole
Clear
purpose of
now.
this bill is
I'm there now.
clarifying language that the DMV is already doing to help these individuals get their driver's
Thank you, Senator.
license.
Okay, Senator Abbott.
Follow. Thank you for taking my question. I guess my concern is by using inconsistent language, would you be perhaps maybe unintentionally allowing people non-resident aliens or non-citizens who are here illegally to get their driver's license? Because I'm not sure if they're both defined with the federal law. That's what I'm trying to get at.
So there was a drafting error where we left alien in this. And, I'm sure we all had issues with OLS this year, and was caught kind of late. So that would be an amendment to strike that verbiage out. I don't know if that answered your question. I'm sorry, Senator. Say it again.
Follow. What I'm trying to get at is if non-citizen and non-resident alien, if there's inconsistent language here, by having that inconsistency, if non-citizen is not the terminology used under the federal law, would perhaps this, maybe unintentionally, but would this then allow someone who's in the country illegally to obtain a driver's license?
I don't believe so, no.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none.
Thank you guys
very
so much.
Senator.
Appreciate it.
The chair will call Christine Wellington. Good afternoon, Ms. Wellington.
Good afternoon, Senator Carson and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I won't go over all the points that Senator Fenton made, but I wanted to focus back on some of the things to hopefully clarify some of the questions that you had. First of all, the DMV only issues New Hampshire driver's licenses to people who are lawfully present. And all of those people will have a social security number, except for an exception that was carved out many years ago in 263-39A for dependents of people lawfully present with student visas or work visas.
Excuse me, Ms. Wellington, are you from the Department of Motor Vehicles?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. I did not properly introduce myself. I'm a citizen of New Hampshire. I live in Derry. I'm also part of the New Hampshire Immigrants' Rights Network. We sent the committee a letter last evening in support that lays out in pretty good detail, I hope, some of the points that should be made. But I want to start off with, this is only talking about what the law permits in New Hampshire, which is lawfully present non-citizens able to obtain a driver's license. So in New Hampshire, you must have a social security number and you must have a work permit, except for the exceptions I just set out that were, that provision was enacted many years ago. That's not anything new. So this is accurate. It does not change any of the current law. It centralizes the eligibility classes into one statute, which has been a source of confusion even for some DMV employees, especially those folks that might not be in the Concord office where they have quite a great expertise in handling non-citizen driver's licenses. The term non-citizen is probably the safest term to use. It is true, Senator, that it could theoretically include anybody, whether they're lawfully present or not. But because of the backdrop of what the New Hampshire law requires and what the DMV practices and regulations are, that wouldn't be a class of people that would be included in eligibility. Non-citizen is generic. Every person that is here lawfully has a particular kind of status. It could be legal permanent resident. It could be an asylee. It could be a refugee. It could be somebody that's on an HB1 visa or a student visa. So it could be a trafficking victim. So some of those categories might lead to citizenship and some are only temporary. So it's very hard to come up with the correct terms. We tried, to use a term that would be universally understood. And the other thing is that is the term non-citizen that the DMV uses in their regulations. So those are things I hope provide some clarity. The real point we believe, and this is why we support it, is to make it easier for the people of New Hampshire to figure out in one statutory location who is eligible for that. And that would lay it out, and it gives us an opportunity to provide more clarity for folks that are actually intending to live in New Hampshire, probably until the point that they are eligible to apply for citizenship.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Wellington. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there other members of the public who would like to speak to Senate Bill 501? Seeing none, close the public hearing, and that concludes our business for the day. We appreciate you all being here, and we will see you tomorrow.